good is the enemy of great.
The guy that enjoys walking will always walk further than the guy that enjoys the destination.
Comparison is the thief of joy. Welcome back to the Biblical Living Podcast. I'm here with Alex from the Pit Ministries.
Hola.
Link to his channel is down below in the description. And I'm here with my pastor friend Chase, just a regular dude. So we are going to talk today about general advice. So we're going to talk about wisdom and advice. So if you've ever been in a point in your life where you said, I just need wisdom in my life, we're going to talk about different areas, general life, in your Christian walk, and in relationships and work, different kinds of advice about different things. And hopefully you'll get a lot of wisdom out of this.
If you've ever been confused about anything in your whole life, you've come to the right podcast.
You're going to know everything. How to build a house. How to talk to girls.
Yep.
How to...
This is it right here.
This is it.
I mean, I'm just saying, buckle up. It's going to be a really long episode.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 17 hours later. And then you want to stroke her hair and look into her eyes. Tell her that you love her.
Yeah.
Tell her you love her.
Yeah.
Start shingling from the bottom.
Make sure your roof flashing doesn't have any gaps.
No. I feel like we need to not intermingle these topics because there's a lot of...
Oh, okay. Whatever. There's a lot of crossover. Women are like roof shingles.
Yep.
First piece of wisdom, don't call your wife a roof shingle.
Yep.
It's very good wisdom. Very, very helpful. So we're going to jump into the topic of wisdom and just general advice. And so we're going to share some just advice that maybe we've heard in our lives that has really helped us, or things that we've learned, just maybe learning the hard way. Yeah. Things which for me is a big thing. I tend to learn things the hard way.
Yeah, I think about that. If I was like younger and needed the advice that I got later, one, would I have heeded it? Probably not. But two, if I'd have gotten it, like I didn't have it, and I probably wouldn't have heeded it, but maybe it would have saved me from some foolishness and some, wandering out in the wilderness kind of season. So hopefully that's what some of this can do.
Awesome. Well, we'll kick it off with just some general life advice. And if, whatever kind of, we can go any direction you guys want to go.
I've got... So whenever we were talking about this, the first one that came into my mind that I almost thought of this as like stuff I wish I knew earlier in life. The first one that came to my mind is mastering the art of delayed gratification.
Oh, that's good.
If you can get that down, that unlocks, apply it to physical well-being, if I can delay gratification, if I can delay what feels good for my body. It feels good right now to watch Netflix, feels good right now to eat the junk or whatever. If I can delay that gratification into the body that I want, the physique or the fitness level or the, whatever, the stamina or the weight record or whatever, if I can delay that gratification until then, I can unlock the real life that I want to have, but apply that to anything, a relationship, money, business, ministry, anything like that. If I can just push that gratification off and not settle for the good that's right now, but the great that can be down the road, I feel like that can unlock a key to a lot of stuff. And that's what I wish somebody had kind of harped on me earlier on in life. Just get good at being okay with putting the work in and not seeing the results for a while, because just so much of life is this compounding, like teeter-totter effect to where you put enough in and then eventually stuff tips and it just starts flowing, but you got to put a lot of work without seeing a lot of result for a while.
All the image that keeps coming to my head every time you're talking about that, you're talking about tipping. All I can think about, have you ever been seen those kids' water parks where they have the little thing and they have that bucket up top?
Giant bucket.
Yeah.
We took my kids to a indoor water park and they had this big bucket, and my daughter would just go and she'd just stand there. And it seems like we'd wait forever. And all she wanted this bucket to fall, but she would just stand there as long as it took.
Delayed gratification.
And just stand there. no matter how long it took, she'd stand there, and eventually it'd fall, and then she gets so excited.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the image that I think of as being willing. And when I say standing there, I don't mean just waiting. I mean doing the work. But But you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's coming, but I think what helps you get there is to be confident that results will come if you're consistent.
Which that's the quote unquote gamble, but it's what's required. So I was thinking about this as kind of a stupid example, but it like came true for me. So I was like sowing. We put our house there where our house is now, and so we needed to sow new grass. And what was required to sow new grass is putting straw down. So I sowed the grass seed, put straw down. I'm thinking I only have a certain amount of straw, so I can spread it more thin and make it last further. But then I'm just making a larger area not as good, rather than making a smaller area what's required. Mm-hmm. And so it's like I'm doing what I have to do to make it actually work, rather than doing a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there, and they all fail. Right. Versus I'm focusing what is required in the area that it's got to be required. I can't be spread that thin, because it's all just not going to work. And so I feel like it's just putting those efforts, putting that, that work into it. Still may not any of it work, but at least I'm taking the steps that's required for that, and sacrificing what I need to not have it fail.
That patience coming in. I can't tell you how many things I've built or something around my property, and instead of going back and getting the right tool for the job that's like 50 yards away, I'll just use a wrench for a hammer or something like that. And it's,
take 10 times longer.
Yeah, and then I'm twice as stressed at the end of it, because wrenches are not hammers.
Right.
We should go get the hammer.
Yep. Absolutely.
It's really good advice. I think in the larger scheme of things, so you can apply this to little things like just the work project around the house, or sowing grass, or the actual projects, and then you could put that on a larger scale of just life, right? Yeah. So delayed gratification. I have this ideal life that I'm looking for, and whether it happens or not, I need to put in the work to make it happen, right? You're not gonna, as much as we all like it, you're not going to open your door in the morning and there's $1 million check waiting on you. Like, that's just not reality. Yeah. So if you want
that show that they used to do that for
Publishers
people.
Clearinghouse.
Yeah. I remember when I was a kid thinking, man, they just come around to
any
everybody?
minute now. Yeah.
They're just going to randomly show up.
Going to show up. Was that the guy that? No, it was a different guy that had the question marks all over his suit.
That was from Batman, wasn't it? The Riddler?
Well, yeah, but there was a real guy that was
make
money off the government or whatever.
Yeah,
like
those
commercials. I know. Yeah, it was a commercial. That's going to bother me. Now I'm going to have to put a little screenshot of that commercial up here.
Or something like that. Yeah, I just had wild suits.
But I think a big thing that helps that in the bigger scheme. So it's in the little things, just knowing, hey, it's going to make my life more difficult if I do the work now, the end result will be better. But in the big scheme of life, when we're talking about delayed gratification that may be years of delayed gratification, sometimes it can get hard to keep that understanding and that thought process going. Sure. And I think one thing that will help with that is recognizing that there is happiness and joy and great fulfillment in the process. There's fulfillment in the journey. So while we're excited about the end result that we are working towards, that delayed gratification, to find those places of contentment and things in the journey before I even get the thing I'm ultimately looking for.
Yeah. Well, and just being okay with not having the payoff today. Being okay with not being happy today, knowing that I'm going to be fulfilled and happy tomorrow. Money's the great example of if you can save X amount of not that many dollars a month, a couple $100 a month, and put it in the interest, you could be a millionaire. So why isn't everybody a millionaire? It's that of if we did all the stuff we knew to do, we'd all have six packs, we would all be millionaires, we just know the stuff to do, we just don't do it. There's no way that eating right and going to the gym doesn't equal I have physically the body that I want. Why don't I have the body that I want? You know what I mean? It's just doing the stuff and getting good at that skill of delaying gratification.
Yeah, absolutely. You got anything else to add to that, or do you want to give your first piece of advice?
No, I think that we about covered that. Did you want to go next, or do you want me to?
Don't matter to me. Go for it.
Fine, I'll go again. I got 90 of these, so we probably should.
I've got a bunch.
All
too.
right,
I wrote down
let's
four.
just-
I thought we were
let's
just doing
rapid
4.
fire. Do 4 then.
Yeah. Okay. So most of mine, well,
That was my fault.
that's okay.
Also, none of mine are from the Bible. Are y'all's from the? I mean, mine are scriptural truths. But
I don't
none
have
of mine
any.
are
I don't have any
scriptures.
direct scripture
I
references.
think I do on 2 of them, maybe.
This
Chase
is why he
most
is
spiritual.
Pastor
He's the
Chase,
regular dude.
regular dude here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just believe the Bible is the truth. That's where I get my truth from.
Okay.
I can if I can
you
throw
edit that
references
out?
up on the for
Edit
mine.
that out. Yeah, find
I
me
can-
some delayed gratification.
There are verses I can find.
You can you can find verses to support what you're saying afterwards, but did you think
Right.
about it beforehand?
Yeah, sure.
It's written on my heart.
Are your actions coming from the Bible, or are you going to the Bible to justify your actions?
I just meditate on scripture enough to make it applicable.
It's on my heart. It's written on my heart.
I didn't just like take it. Just grab
okay.
a couple random scriptures for a podcast.
Go. Go for it, Chase.
Okay, so 2 of mine come from coaches. So I've got like tons of stuff rolling around in my mind that's come from sports, football, wrestling.
That's whenever you talk about your coaches, I get jealous because I had like 2 coaches. The most famous quote from one of my coaches was, "Are we starting at 9 or 9:30?" Like that's what I learned from my coaches.
Well,
so like I'm
well, I
always
had-
listening real hard whenever you hear.
I had a lot of coaches. Not all of them were good. So like if you've got
Yeah.
15 coaches, 2
Sure.
of them are going to be pretty decent.
Yeah.
Probably the odds there.
I had 2, and it was the dad that did not make eye contact when they were asking who wants to coach this year.
Oh, you sir.
Hey, yeah. What's your work schedule look like?
You ever play baseball?
Yeah.
So this comes from one of my football coaches, and he always said, good is the enemy of great. And this was meant to be kind of like a motivator to pursue greatness over just adequacy or over just good stuff. And that works really well in the sports world. It's one of the truest pieces of advice I've ever heard. There's a balance between those 2 things, greatness and goodness. We can't expend all of our time 100% on one thing.
Yeah.
Like we've got so many different things in our lives, so there is a balance. We need to decide what's good and what's great. What do we need to make great in our lives, and what's okay just being good.
Yeah.
Because despite kind of the leanings that this coach was pushing, it's okay that some things are good enough.
Yeah.
Like everything doesn't have to be great.
Somebody said good and done is better than
Yes.
great and late.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So I think along the lines of, like, example, my yard, for instance. Like, does my yard need to be great? Do I need to have all the lines diagonal,
Right.
everything we needed? Like, I've got the sprinkler out front. Does my yard need to be great? Maybe if I'm a single guy and I've got no other hobbies, nothing else, maybe, yeah, your yard probably should be great. You need to do something with greatness in your life.
White New Balance, dude.
Yeah.
White tube socks, jean
Right.
shorts.
Right. But for me, I'm not a single guy, so my yard doesn't need to be great. My family, does my family need to be great? Yes, obviously. And within that, there's a ton of different areas too. So education, physical health, mental health, spiritual health, all these different things wrap up into caring for your family. And all those things need to be great.
Well, I think the answer to figuring out that it's getting good at prioritization.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what is the priorities in your life? And ultimately, as a Christian, the way we set our priorities comes from God. So whereas, you've seen stories or heard stories of those fathers and husbands who are, obsessed with their career. So they're always gone. They're never with their family. Their kids don't ever see them. They don't ever. And that, in their mind, they are prioritizing and they're being the great businessman, but they're sacrificing other things. You're always going to sacrifice something. It's saying yes to one thing is saying no to something else, right? I can't say yes to, I said yes to be here to record this podcast, so I said no to sitting somewhere else and doing something else, right? So you're going to always be saying no to something. So as a Christian, we have to align our priorities with what biblical principles teach us should be priority, relationship with God being first and foremost, and then going from there. And so we have to figure out how to, in order to be great, good is the enemy of great. But I would suggest that, to add to that, I would say that lack of priorities is the enemy of being great as well. Like I heard it said this way. There's this spoken word artist.
Oh,
What?
I knew y'all.
What is
shut
that?
it down. What? But then I went up the hill, and then I went down the hill. That's spoken word.
Absolutely not.
That's 100%
So
all spoken word is.
this
Just
guy, his-
rambling, but with emphasis.
This guy, he has a thing, and he says a line that has always stuck with me. He said,
She said multitasking is a myth. You ain't doing anything good, just everything awful.
and that's without right priorities. That's what happens. We are only good. We can never become great at anything because we have no priorities. Our priorities are out of whack. So prioritization is the key to make greatness happen.
Yeah, I've kind of discovered, me personally, I have trouble doing more than 3 big things in my life well. Like if I take on 4 or 5 big things that need to be done, I'm going to be slacking in those things. So for me, it's my family, church, and work. Like I can do those 3 things. Mm-hmm. And then the rest of my time is filled with taking care of smaller details or studying for one of these things. So studying for my family, studying for the church, studying for work, getting better at those things. Mm-hmm. I'm not you just said multitasking isn't real. I know it isn't for me. I'm not very good at it.
Yeah, I would say that multitasking is one of those things where it's real in the sense that you can do it, but it's a lie in the sense that it's helpful. It's not useful. It's not helpful. It's not actually going to bring about the results. Like everybody multitasking and I can get a lot done, and in reality, you may get a lot of stuff done, but you're getting it done not at greatness. You're not
Haphazardly.
Yeah. Growing up, my dad always told me, if you're gonna do a half job, just don't even do it. Just if what you're doing is you're just, there's a word for that, but you know what I'm saying.
I had people in my life tell me that too. They didn't say it like that. But they said
If you don't have time to do it right the first time, when are you going to find time to do it over?
Yep.
That's really good.
Some good wisdom. Some good farm wisdom.
Yeah.
You ask those dudes that have been out in the field for 50 years, they've had some time to do some thinking.
Right. And they know what's good enough. Like they're not going to do a subpar job. They're going to do something that's going to last, but they're not going to do something that's going to last a million years.
Right.
Like it just needs to get past them is pretty much what
But it
those
also
guys think.
doesn't need to impress the neighbors.
Yes.
It has to hold the cow.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So,
Do you have any wisdom?
I do.
No,
I have no wisdom.
no.
Just pack it up and be done then. Well, yeah, I got it up here. No,
Oh.
I do have notes, but I've already looked at them and now it's
We
up
talked
here.
about humility last week.
We did in the last episode. We did talk about humility.
That's done with.
That's in the past. No, so for me, the first piece of general life advice that has kind of stuck with me, and I've seen it online, I think, at some point, which is where it kind of popped in my head and it really stuck with me. It's being interested will take you further than being interesting. And what I mean by that, or what really stuck out to me about
Think
that,
about that for a minute. Is that from? It makes sense. I just had to. It took me a while, like processing. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right.
okay, processing.
Yeah.
So for me, and what I take out of that, and what I mean by that, is that there's kind of a twofold thing. There's one aspect of it that's, in my opinion, knowledge based, and one aspect that's relational based. So the relational based, I'm going to grow further in relationship with people by being more interested in them than trying to make myself interesting to them.
Yeah.
People are interested in people who are interested in it, right? So, if I just relationally speaking, if I'm interested in others and take and care for others and focus on others, my relationship with them is going to be better than if I'm self-focused. Hey, look at me, look what I can do. So in a relational aspect, it's that way, but also in the knowledge aspect of being interested and wanting to grow and learn and being interested in knowledge and gaining more information, and will always take you further than being interesting enough to say, look what I already know. So being interested in gaining more knowledge will take me further than being impressed by the knowledge I already have and trying to make myself interesting with what I already know.
Sure.
So that's kind of the two ways I take that statement.
Sure. That's similar to actually one I've got written down. It's something along the lines of the guy that enjoys walking will always walk further than the guy that enjoys the destination. And it's kind of the same thing of like, if I enjoy the process of learning rather than I want to get to the place where I'm a knowledgeable person, one of those people is going to study more because they just enjoy the learning. They're seeking the knowledge for knowledge's sake because they enjoy it, not the end goal of being a smart person or impressing people or whatever it is. So it's good.
Completely agree.
That's a good one.
That ties into my next point too.
Go for it.
Another coach always gave this
I thought your
advice.
stuff came from the Bible. It came from coaches. You lie.
My next two come from
Another
the Bible.
Coach Jesus.
You lie, you fry.
No, I'm not lying. We'll get to those actual truth in a minute.
Go for it.
So another coach I had, he always said, always be like a dry sponge. And this kind of ties in with exactly what you were just saying. So we always want to absorb what we're being taught, as long as it's from reputable sources. If somebody's saying something, pay attention to it. Many people are too focused on doing the thing or trying to do it well so they're not embarrassed, that they're not paying attention. Like if somebody gives you instructions, stop, let's pay attention to what they're saying. So many people get hung up. I'm thinking of this situation in my head. Winnie actually said this was on the football field. I was during practice, and there were these guys that they were freshmen, and we were doing this drill. And it was a really simple drill, and the coach was, telling them how you're gonna pull here, go around here, hit this dummy, and that's it. And they were just
That kid's like, hey.
no, rubber dummy, not another
This freaking
athlete.
idiot. Coach's kid that they had to put on the
hit
team.
the kid on
He's
the
like,
end
I
down
don't
there.
know. This dummy.
But they weren't able to do that because they weren't listening to the instructions. They had already figured out what they wanted to do or what they thought they needed to do, or they were so worried about doing it well and not being embarrassed that they didn't actually learn how they should have actually done it.
I see this, and I'm going to be honest, this is an area that I struggle with a lot. And it probably comes from because I'm a debater, so I love debate, which is so much. It's for those of you who don't know me personally, debate is like a stress relief to me. So when I debate, I love it, man. It just makes
It's the
me
opposite for me.
it is for my wife too.
Being around
But-
you when you debate is the opposite of the stress.
I love debate. It calms me down. It may not look like I'm calm, but it calms me down.
Boy, it sure doesn't.
But a lot of times in debate, and this happens a lot in debate, is you're listening to what the other person's saying, but you're formulating how you're going to respond to what the other person's saying. Because that's the whole context of debate. I'm going to counter your point. But in real life, outside of debate, that's not a good thing, right? It can be very bad. And so it's very easy especially with someone like me who's very debate oriented in the way I think, and I'm thinking that way all the time. I have to constantly check myself because I do that. I'm not focused on, like, I'm thinking of what comes next. Like, and even I do it naturally, even with you talking this point, my brain's going to, okay, what can I say on, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm thinking ahead, which is fine to an extent. It's fine to be thinking ahead. Like, you don't want to just not have thoughts but you got to be careful not to allow that to overtake actually caring about what the other person's saying and what's actually happening and learning. This one thing I try to teach my son, like even in where we homeschool my children, and my son doing math and doing things like that, he's like, I just want to get it done. He's like, I just want to get my work done. So he kind of just jumps and runs. And I'm like, if you slow down a second, and I do this with my daughter when we're reading, and she's reading a book to me, but she's just she's filling in blanks of what she thinks is going to happen next in the story. Yeah. So she's saying wrong words every once in a while because in her head she's filled in blanks. I'm like, slow down. That's not what that word says.
Right.
And so it's easy to get in that mode of filling in blanks and not actually slowing down, saying what's really happening, what's really being said, what's really going on.
And I use this advice. This is probably one of my most used advice that impacted me the most. I've had the opportunity to start a lot of new things in my life. So like new jobs, sports, hobbies, preaching, all kinds of new stuff. And I've taken this be like a dry sponge into everything. So when I'm starting something new, I usually seek out the people that I think are the best at that thing. And
That's why I sought us out on podcasting.
Exactly.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I'll seek out the best people at those things. Right. And I'll read their books. I'll listen to them talk.
Yeah.
And just to try to learn, absorb what they're saying. And that's another reason why I'm constantly reading too, because I don't ever want to be dry. I want to always be absorbing. And the counter to that is I don't want to be a fully wet sponge who can't absorb anything new. I don't ever want to feel like I know everything and I've got no space left to learn from anybody.
Yeah, that's good. That goes to one of my points. I have consider the source.
That's good.
The same kind of thing of like, don't take money advice from broke people. Don't take, fitness advice from people out of shape. Don't take marriage advice from people who hate their marriage. Don't take raising your kids advice from people whose kids are brats. Like, figure out, does this person have the life that you want before you go following down the trail that they're on? And because they're saying something to you, if they're not putting that into practice, then it may not be advice worth following. And so just consider the source from where all that stuff comes from. I work in jails and prisons, and there's so many business ideas. And I had a guy telling me the other day, like, this is how you do job interviews to land high-paying jobs, and he's never had a high-paying job and is currently incarcerated.
Right.
So it's just like he just wouldn't come off of couldn't see the forest for the trees. But so it's just that, like, consider where's the information coming from. Is this person putting it into practice their life? I know, I won't say the person's name, but somebody we both know whose life is constantly in shambles all the time. Every aspect of their life is terrible. And
you talking about me?
No. The shoe fits. Like, that's off.
Are you feeling convicted over there?
A little bit.
They're crying, and it's not just like a one-time like
Sorry,
bad stuff.
I'll use less scripture next time.
Well, maybe you should follow it. It's not like they had like a bad season and like something like life is constantly falling apart because of their poor decisions. And they were telling me one time how they just really need to get their life coaching business going, so that way they can teach other people how to.
That's a bad idea.
Their life falling apart, but they like know the stuff to say, but they're not doing any of it. So it's just like consider the source.
And I think considering the source, I think there's a couple aspects of that. Consider the source in the sense of what are they living, versus a lot of people have a bad habit of they look at titles or positions and then they just take the advice because of the title or the position of the person,
right,
without examining the life. Like, when Scripture talks about looking at other people's lives, and this will kind of tie into something in a moment that I'm going to give as my next piece, but when we look at other people's lives, Scripture doesn't teach us to look at their positions or their titles. It teaches us to examine fruit. And
we talked about this last time.
We did talk about this last time in a different context.
Song of Solomon, the pomegranates.
Oh, Lord.
It's in the Bible. I'm just quoting the scripture to you guys.
It's
in the Bible, King James Bible.
King James.
Only authorized version.
That's right. No, but the idea of examining fruit of someone's life is more than just examining the position. Like, just because someone, and this is good advice for people in the church, just because someone who has the title pastor in front of their name tells you something doesn't mean they're right.
Right.
Just because someone who has every realm, just because someone has the term manager in front of their name doesn't mean they're right. Just because someone has the term president in front of their name, not getting political, but you get the point, right? Like,
Right.
we often look at positions and titles and we just trust these people as experts or authorities on certain topics. So we just take whatever they say. But the way we consider the source goes beyond, well, this is an esteemed person, so they're telling me this, so this has got to be the right advice. The way we consider the source is to look at the fruit. Right. Like you said, are they living it? Are they actually taking this advice? Look at the fruit of their life, not just the title or position. And I think so often people quote experts. This person has a PhD and wrote a parenting book, so they got to be the expert on parenting.
Right.
Right. That's not, just because they're an expert, that doesn't necessarily mean that what they're saying is accurate.
No kids.
Right.
I can tell you how many people with no kids gave me my wife parenting advice.
Oh, Lord. You ain't kidding.
And they could be right, but you would have no way to tell.
Right.
They could have their correct information, but why you shouldn't trust them?
Well, yeah, it's just information. Like, and I remember hearing this from a pastor, and just kind of set my heart to like have this as a way of doing things. But he says he wouldn't teach anything from a pulpit that he doesn't know from experience. And so it may be true, and if it's in the Bible, it's true. You can preach whatever you want in the Bible. But if I don't know it from experience, I can't teach it really, because I don't really know it to be true enough to teach you. I know that's true because I trust God.
Right.
But if it's just, hey, this is how you raise the dead, and I've never raised the dead, like, I don't have the authority to teach that. And so it's just the same kind of thing. Like, it may be absolutely true, but if you haven't like walked it out and known all the nuances that go with it and everything else that's equipped with it, I feel like that's the dividing line between knowledge and wisdom. Just like it can be the same words coming out of your mouth, but one person has tried and true tested this thing,
right,
and can dispel it as wisdom than knowledge.
That's how Jesus walked, right? So Jesus came,
right,
and the Bible says he's our great high priest that knows what he experienced it. Like it was one thing from God, from heaven, from his throne, to look down on humanity. It was a completely different thing when he came and experienced it. So now when he talks, the words of when we hear the words of Jesus now and the things Jesus, he lived it, he experienced it. He knows what it was like to be betrayed. He knows what it was like to do all these things. All these scriptural things. He knows what it's like to follow the commandments of God. He knows what it's like. So now he's speaking from a place of actual experiential knowledge, and there's fruit of his life that back up his words.
Right.
And so not that you couldn't listen to God before. He obviously created all, but that's one of the reasons God became a man, was to experience what we experience.
Yep.
Which I think is key. And so now we can trust that. Not that we couldn't trust his word before, but you get what I'm saying. Like we can. Yeah. There's a different type of.
It was mighty nice of him to
trust.
do that.
It was mighty nice. It's almost like he planned that.
We can appeal to him more fully because he understands us.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Now, with that being said, this kind of ties into my next piece of advice. And it's not really advice, it's just wisdom. And honestly, I've heard it from a lot of different sources, but the one person who's said it a million times to me is my wife.
Oh, jeez.
We'll discredit that.
What are you bringing this stuff in here for?
April, I got you.
You think this is a women's conference?
So my wife, she says it all the time. Comparison is the thief of joy. And that wisdom, so we consider the source, but we don't compare ourselves to the source, if that makes sense. So we find a source that has the thing I want, and so we listen to the advice and the wisdom they give, but we don't compare where we are now to them, right? So if we compare, a comparison will do nothing but either make you feel elevated in your mind that you're better than someone when you're not, or it will make you feel depressed and broken down because you haven't obtained what somebody else has attained. Right. And so both of those will actually rob you of true joy. Yeah. So comparison is the thief of joy. Thoughts on that?
Well, it's comparing my day one with their 5 years down the same path. If I stay down this path as long as they've done this path, I'll be where they're at. But, I'll feel inadequate or like I'm not measuring up. Well, of course not, because they've been doing it longer than I have. So,
and I think there's a lot of this comes down to why I'm doing it too. So, just preaching, for example, there's always going to be preachers that are better than me. I'm a low tier quality preacher, if you ask me. But that's not why I do it. Like, I'm not preaching to get better. I'm not preaching to be even good at it. I'm preaching because God wants me to.
Don't want to that week.
Yeah, I'm preaching because there's just an open spot and somebody's got
a week
to
off. Like,
I'm preaching.
We had like another pastor at this church. That'd be sick. Oh, Chase, what are you doing on Saturday?
Right? Yeah. Uh-huh. No, I preach because I want to teach God's truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times if we get out of that mindset of why we're doing something, it's a whole lot easier to start comparing ourselves to people that are better than us, and jealousy can creep in from there, envy, and we end up losing our joy of the why we're doing it in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, and I think this is the key. It kind of goes back to what I said with the first piece of advice you gave with delayed gratification. It's the journey itself is valuable.
Yeah.
And I think so often what we're looking at when we compare destinations. Look where this person's at compared to where I'm at, not realizing that the journey of us getting to that place is valuable in and of itself. God walks with us every step of the way. Mm-hmm. And so we think, oh, I got to get to this destination. And God's like, I'm walking with you right here. Like I'm on this path with you. And when we can view the fact that the journey itself is valuable, then I don't care. I don't need to compare myself to where you're at or to where you're at or just where somebody else is at, because it doesn't matter to me, because right now I'm on this journey with God, and he's doing something in me as I'm taking this journey. So the destination, whether I ever get to where you're at or not, I'm on this journey with God, so I'm good.
There's a minister that I listen to that shall remain nameless for the sake of the podcast. But he just talking about, God showing you things or people if you have the perspective of remaining curious rather than comparison, then he shows you things as, oh, that's possible, instead of, oh, why am I not at the place where they're at? God shows you things if you're curious about it, of like, oh, that opens a new door for me for that aspect of God, or that thing that he can do, or that, and you can apply that to any life. Like, oh, if I see a great artist doing that opens my mind to, oh, hey, that's possible, instead of, oh, why am I not doing stuff like that? You're seeing the exact same thing, but if you have a different perspective, then you'll go a lot further with that. Another one for me, and this kind of ties into identity and just how you see things or how you see what you do, is how you do anything is how you do everything. And along with that, your repetition is your reputation. And so it's not that, I'm doing this one thing and I cut corners on this thing. It's that I'm the type of person that cuts corners on things. And two of those are different. One of those people don't cut corners on things. One of those people do. Mm-hmm. And so it's just, it's not so much it's realizing that what you do, whether I would say it or admit it or not, that shows more about who I really think I am or who I believe myself to be, more than what I think or recite or have going on in my head of this image that I have of myself. What do my actions say? Because that's what I truly believe is what will come out in my actions, how I treat people, how I, approach work, how I, manage relationships or manage church or ministry, and that kind of stuff. If I'm willing to do it in this area, there's probably areas of my life that it bleeds through, because that's who I am. I'm the type of person that's willing to do a bad thing here. I'm willing to say a rude thing to people. I'm just a person that's willing to say rude things to people. That's not a single event. So just realizing that, like, I need to reassess my identity or my why for doing things, or my whatever it is, whenever I see myself doing something that's incongruent with the identity that I'm trying to have.
That's really good.
I think that hits pretty much every area of life. So think about that as a Christian, as a father, as a husband, as a worker at my job, as anything. Are you, what type of person are you? And you don't base that on what you say you are. You base it on your actions. So I've heard this before, and I've heard preachers say this. Is one of those cheesy little things preachers say. but it's just like, and it's I say cheesy, but it's a really true point.
Justified. That's
Is
justified. Never seen.
No. No, not that one. If you were put on trial, so I've heard people say, if you were put on trial for being a Christian, quote, would there be enough evidence to convict you? Well, it's the same.
I've said that during messages.
Cheesy things preachers say. That's what I said.
There's a stupid, dumb thing that only idiot preachers say, and then you say, like, it's something I've used recently in a sermon.
Cheesy preacher. No, so, but my point is, apply that to everything, not just Christian. If you were put on trial for being a good husband, would there be enough to convict you? If you were put on trial for being a good employee, would there be enough evidence to convict you? Like, take every aspect of your life and say, this is what I claim I am or what I want to be. Now look at my actions. Is there enough evidence to actually back that identity up? And if there's not, then you need to reevaluate your actions.
Evidence to back that thing up. Is there enough evidence to do that? What? I just agree with your point. What are you talking about?
I didn't say a word.
Well, you turned into color. I just didn't know what you were talking about.
So speaking of work, unless you had anything you want to say on that point.
I've completely lost my train of thought after that.
Back that thing up just to mess you up.
Fruit up.
Oh, Lord.
This is quickly becoming a non-Christian podcast.
Very, very quickly.
I'm just quoting Song of Solomon, guys.
So I talked about in work and being an employee. For work advice, there were two pieces of work advice that have been given to me in my life that are very important. One of them is, and this is going to sound crazy to an extent, it's never work for a paycheck. I had a youth pastor tell me that. Never work for a paycheck. Now, the truth is, if none of us had to go to a 9-to-5 job for a paycheck, we wouldn't. Like, if I didn't need the money, most often you're not going to go to some 9-to-5. You're going to do something you love. Mm-hmm. Not saying it may or may not be a 9-to-5, but you're not going to just go to work to get the paycheck. But the truth is, most people need a paycheck. So
the Instagram guys, they're like, quit your job today, grind 4 a.m. Like, well, my family's gonna get real hungry.
Very hungry, very fast. So to an extent, we need that paycheck, right? But what my youth pastor told me was never work for a paycheck. This is what he said. He said, do something you love, or do something you don't love for someone you love. Mm-hmm. So it's either your dream job may not be what you're doing right now, but don't focus in, I'm only doing this to get that paycheck, because then you're just going to do the bare minimum to get the paycheck.
Right.
Instead, either if you're doing something you love, great. If you're doing a job that you have to provide for your family or for yourself, then either you want to do it for someone you love, and if that may not be, if you're not married, don't have kids, it may be, I'm talking about for God, they do all things as unto the Lord is what the scripture says, right? So do it for Him and for your family and for yourself, and not for the paycheck. And if you do that, then ultimately the paycheck will end up changing and growing over time, because you're bearing fruit of, that's actually useful that people see. I heard a preacher say one time, if you're a plumber, you should be the best plumber. Like, you should have the best reviews. You should be the best plumber. If you're work as an electrician, you should be the best electrician that exists, because you're doing it as a Christian different than the world. You're not working for that paycheck, just doing enough to get to that paycheck. You're doing as unto the Lord. And what would you do if you were doing it as unto the Lord? How would you, if you were serving Him, what would you offer Him?
Yeah, I'd serve Him where I'm at.
And then the other, and I'll let you can respond, serve God where you're at, right there. Even if it's a 9-to-5 job you hate, serve God where you're at.
Serve God where you're at.
The other piece of work advice that has always stuck with me, and y'all can respond to both these, is learn to communicate on 3 levels: to managers, to peers, and to subordinates. Learn how to communicate to your managers to get them to buy into what your vision, what you see, and to serve their vision. But ultimately, even if you have a manager you feel like is doing things wrong or things aren't going good, learn how to communicate to them correctly. Communicating to your manager correctly is not going up to your manager and saying, "Hey, you're running this place terrible." That's not the right way to communicate. Right? You suck. No, learn.
Please, sir, please listen to me, Mr. Boss Man.
Right.
That's exactly right. Those are the exact words.
Those exact words, Mr. Boss Man.
Please,
Please. But learn how to communicate to managers, to peers, your other coworkers, and to those under you. Those under you to inspire them. Like I always said when I was in management positions at different jobs, I always said my job was to train those under me to take my job. Like that's how. So I talked to them in a way that would build them up to my position. I want them to take my job, and hopefully my manager's training me up to take their job, and it continues to grow. And that's always
that guy's just homeless.
homeless. Once you get to the top, yeah. No,
he murders the current CEO and takes over pirate style.
took a dark turn
I'm
really
just
fast.
saying, that's how you take over companies. I'm pretty sure. A coup d'état.
Yeah.
I
A
don't.
mutiny. You ever heard of a mutiny?
I've heard of it. I don't think that's the correct way to handle.
It happened a couple times on Pirates of the Caribbean.
Are you familiar with who's that guy we were reading about? Roger? No. The one that got away.
Yeah.
Thomas?
Blackbeard's mentor.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name.
I'll throw it up on the bottom.
Started
of the screen.
the pirate havens down in the
Bahama.
yeah.
I don't know how to look it up.
Roger?
That's who I'm reading about now, Robert Rogers. It could be Roger something.
But so never work for a paycheck. Do something you love,
My hero.
or for someone you love, or learn to communicate. Also learn to communicate to managers, peers, and
Or
people under you.
stage a mutiny and sail the high seas.
It's not
Yeah,
good
that's
advice.
preferable.
4 options. 3. You gave 3. I gave the other one.
It'd be difficult to do that today, just with how many like American battleships there are.
It'd be
out there.
harder.
Yeah.
Where did this podcast go off
Well,
the rails? Where are we?
Like the guy on Instagram said, follow your dreams and wake up at 4 in the morning and grind. And my dream is to be a pirate.
Well,
So
in all reality,
wake up at
just
4 in the morning.
derailing this a little more. Erin was made for me, right? God put her in my life. I know this because if I was not married to her,
Yeah.
I would be off doing crazy stuff. Like
Yeah.
I would have bought a sailboat and been sailing around the world, or I'd be up in Alaska doing something like that. Erin,
What a terrible
Grounds
life.
me.
That sounds like
no.
fantastic. Oh man, what a terrible life. I'd have millions of dollars
But
and
I
live in a
don't
mansion,
think
and
that would
just
be God's will, is what I'm saying. I think Aaron, God put Aaron in my life.
So when
to
Erin
ground
watches
me.
this, she's going to hear Alex saying that she held you back. That's what I heard.
Like Erin was a woman for me. She took away all the fun stuff I was going to do for my
No,
life.
no. I think she keeps me from making dumb decisions. That's how I would word it.
I would
Totally.
agree with that.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. So any work advice, anything you want to say about those things, or any other work advice y'all have?
So a year from now, you'll wish you had started today.
That's good.
You know, so
Yeah.
it's just like kind of goes to that delayed gratification thing of like, I'm not looking for starting today for starting today's sake. I'm looking for a year from now. If I had started today and been working at this thing a year from now, what would the progress be then?
It's interesting you see that. So I've been wanting for a long time to do a YouTube channel. This ain't my first YouTube channel. I had one before.
This is going on YouTube. You have a YouTube channel.
That's what I'm saying.
It's called The Word Room. And guys, get closing in on 500 subscribers.
We're closing in.
Do
We're closing
promos
in.
for you.
But I had a YouTube channel before this. I did it, and it was fun, but it was a topic I enjoyed, but it wasn't my true passionate topic. But I wanted to start. Let it go. Let it
It's
go.
ridiculous. You would have had to believe it out.
But I had to. But ultimately, a lot of times when it comes to like starting YouTube channels or doing a podcast, which the three of us had talked about for how long? Like, you know what I'm saying? We've
Just
talked about
before this church
This is
started.
before we started this church, and this church has been going for a few years, you know. So we've talked about podcasts, we talked about doing all this stuff, but ultimately you have to pull the trigger at some point and actually just do it, whether it's good or not. You know, if you go back on this channel, look at my first video and look at where we are now, like.
The first podcast,
Oh,
6 episodes ago.
Yeah, 6 episodes ago. Look, it's changed.
Yep.
And so what I've learned with a year from now, like you said, a year from now, you'll wish you had started a year ago. If you start now with what you have, you get better as you go.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, one of the biggest reasons they don't start now and this goes with work or anything, a lot of the reasons they don't start now is because they're paralyzed by not being good enough. And the truth is, and this is the hard truth everybody needs to learn, you aren't good enough. You know, like you're not good enough, but you can become that, but you're never going to become that without doing.
And steer a moving car.
Right. And you know, if you're watching this and you've ever thought about starting a YouTube channel, just start making videos. You're going to be terrible at it. It's going to be bad
because
I'm still not great at making videos.
We want you to fail so that we can succeed.
The market's flooded right now, guys. Don't start a YouTube channel.
One less YouTube channel. That's one less competition for us.
I'm just start. But my point is, so many people get paralyzed by I ain't got perfect. People do this with having kids. I'm not gonna have kids till I've got all my ducks in a row. If you wait till you're financially ready to have kids, you're never having kids. If you wait till everything's perfect, you're never going to get there because everything's never going to be perfect.
Right.
And so,
especially nowadays, the way the economy is.
Yeah, you ain't kidding.
Yeah.
But
kids these days too. They're just out here in these streets.
I mean, geez.
Yeah.
But
pray for these streets.
So you got to start somewhere. So don't let the fear of I'm not good enough, or I haven't got everything together, or I ain't got it all. I don't know how to do everything. You know, my wife and I started a small garden, and for the long time we wanted to get the garden going, and we were paralyzed by information overload, just trying to do it, just sitting there doing it and looking and reading and research. And at some point, analysis paralysis, exactly. At some point, you got to pull the trigger and just do. Because
there's just as many people telling you what not to do as there is people telling you to do stuff.
Oh yeah, so much conflicting.
And that can be very overwhelming.
Yeah. And for every opinion on any topic you find, you'll find the exact opposite opinion as well. Yeah. And so at the end of the day, you just got to try something. Just start.
Smoking cigarettes is bad. Like, well, there's 10 blog posts that say smoking cigarettes is good. So I don't know. I don't know what.
I actually heard somebody talking about this today.
Here we go. Let's fire it up.
They said that smoking is the only thing that's bad for us that the government discourages. So does that mean it's actually good for us and they're just discouraging us from good stuff?
Probably.
You heard the conspiracy here first.
Yes. I think we should look into this.
Comment down below
tar,
your thoughts.
I don't think they're putting tar in there. Right. Asphalt, fiberglass.
You know how expensive tar is? No. I've seen just as many articles about the Earth being round as there is about the Earth not being round.
That's true.
So.
Yep.
I've heard it
all. The Bible
all.
says it's flat.
Have you heard of the hollow Earth people too?
I have.
There's this not only it's round, it's spherical, but it's hollow.
Did you hear the video of the Russian miners?
No.
They were drilling down in the earth and heard people screaming in hell.
Oh, really?
There's a video of that on YouTube it right now. It's out there. Yeah, they were drilling or something, and then they got down far enough and they could. It's a really old audio, but you can hear people screaming.
So they stopped. They stopped drilling.
They were like, hey, these people fell down this mine shaft that we're drilling.
I'm sure that was fake.
But I'm not saying that's real. I don't know.
It's on YouTube though. It's got to be real.
If it's on YouTube, it's real.
Like you're in a mine and you hear people screaming, like, "Well, go save that person." They're in a mine. They fell down a mine.
Yeah. No, these Russians turned around and ran out the door.
Oh yeah, if you're scaring Russians, it must be pretty serious. So another piece that I have, and it's this. We teach it in counseling, but it's just great. I teach it to people, but you shouldn't follow it. No, but I teach it. But it's this image of like, and there's math to it, and it's been in books and stuff before.
No thanks.
Let's say, numbers and crap. I'll save you all the math crap and just get to the truth.
Get to it.
But so like a ship, I've heard it with the airplane leaving. Let's say an airplane is flying out of LAX and they're flying to Orlando, Florida, right? If the airplane is 6 feet to the left in Los Angeles, they'll arrive like 150 miles from where they were trying to end up in Orlando. And so it's this picture that an incremental change, a tiny change back here over 20 years, over 50 years, I'm going to pray for 2 minutes. That over 20 years is 2 minutes times 365 times 20.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I mean? And so and that kind of bleeds into something that you exposed me to, was the idea of, plotting and productivity and the incremental changes and how they lead to, bigger results.
Yeah, a wise man, when he gave the example of this, talked about building like a walkway for his wife.
Yeah.
So going out the back door, if a man starts putting one brick down a day, eventually he's going to have a walkway and he's going to be able to call his wife out and show her that walkway. But if we keep putting stuff off, going back to Matt's point earlier and your point, it's never going to be done.
Right.
Like, start now, put the one brick in every day. Let's plod along with this.
Absolutely.
And you're going to see progress faster than you would imagine.
Yeah.
Just a little bit a day.
So this guy that, we've talked about that wrote the book Productivity, but you look at him, he's got books and volumes and does a million things, school and denominations and just all this kind of stuff. And like, agree with him or disagree with him, it's just an exorbitant amount of work.
Right.
And just talking about that's the key to a lot of the stuff is just 10 minutes a day for the long haul consistently. Of it looks like this humongous thing, but if you just little bitty bite-sized chunk, you write 1 page a day in a year, that's a novel. And just having that kind of outlook on things. It's a kind of a delayed gratification way of looking at things too, but also just breaking things down into super manageable bite-sized chunks. And like, winning looks like I did my 10 minutes of writing today, not winning looks like I wrote a book.
And that goes back to that overcomes that analysis paralysis we talked about, right? So instead of thinking about the end goal of where I want to write, let's say you're writing a book and you want to write 500 pages. Instead of thinking about, I got to write 500 pages, if I wake up and I think I got to write 30 minutes today, that's much more manageable and overcomes that analysis paralysis, because I can do 30 minutes today. I could, instead of thinking about, I want to get that six pack, and I'm talking to myself here, right? So instead of thinking, I want to get that six pack, thinking, I'm gonna do this amount of time in the gym today, right? So I focus on the day at hand and the whatever small chunk I'm doing today, and quit focusing on the whole huge thing. Sometimes we look at the big thing and it looks impossible, but the way you climb a mountain is one step at a time. So instead of looking up at the peak of the mountain and thinking, I got to get up there, my next step is all I'm looking at right now.
That's a big thing I learned from wrestling too. If anybody's ever wrestled out there, practice is miserable. So if you go into practice thinking this is going to be a 2-hour session, you're going to be miserable. So let's take it 10 minutes at a time. Let's take it drill at a time, like one drill to the next. That's how you get through the miserable, the suck, as some people would call it.
Get through the suck. I remember anytime I've tried to do walking, like running or anything like that, if I look at the distance I got to go, I'm not doing it. There's places I can go that I walk or run, and anytime I do that, what I look at my head, okay, there's a tree that I can see that my goal is to get to that tree. And then after I pass that tree, a little bit up, there's that rock. So I can find those places and see those things that are right in front of me, like maybe not right in front of me, like, it's just that short distance. And if I do that, when I add that distance with the next one, now I've gone a longer distance that I would have given up or quit had I thought about the longer distance. And I think the same concept applies to anything you do. Even your work day, like if you just think of, if you're at work and all you're thinking about is quitting time, so you're constantly looking at the clock thinking about the quitting time, it seems like the day goes so long, takes forever. But if you go through your day and you say, okay, for the next 20 minutes, this is what I need to do, and that's what you're focused on, small chunks of the day, it'll go better, it'll go faster, your day will just be more enjoyable.
Well, and it's just consumable too. Like, there's just some things we just can't wrap our heads around. It'll just overwhelm us. Working with drug addicts and alcoholics, and 12-step, the Alcoholics Anonymous kind of thing is big on just one day at a time. That's all I got to focus on. One day at a time, and they have a phrase, do the next right thing. So it's like, whether I feel like it, whether it seems like it, whether I can rationalize it, whatever, just do the next right thing. Just the next right thing after next right thing after next right thing will lead to 10, 20, 30 years of sobriety. And just 24 hours. That's all you got to focus on. And that's true for anybody too, though. Just all I got to do is show up today. Somebody said, and I guess this would be another thing too, goals are good to have, but fix your process, not necessarily your goals. And so it's that, like, you can have the greatest goal in the world, but distill it down to, like, what do I need to do today to move me towards that goal? And that's what I need to fix. I need to fix the habits that are going to lead to me being a world champion or lead to me being a whatever. And that's what's going to make the difference. Not everybody wants to be a world champion. Everybody's got that goal. Not everybody's a world champion. What's the difference? And it's just the daily habits, the daily mechanisms of action that, get people.
Yep. Chase, you got any other advice you want to throw out there?
This was kind of hard. Well, actually, this first one wasn't hard to narrow down at all. This is the thing that probably has changed my life more than anything else. When I came back to the Lord, this is one of the first kind of revelations He showed me, kind of brought me along in the path that I needed to go. And that's just a simple that we need to die to ourselves. Like as Christians, we need to die to ourselves. We're no longer living for ourselves anymore. And when I read John 12:25, here comes the scripture, everybody. I haven't been able to look at anything else the same after reading this. Anyone who loves their life will lose it, while anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Mm-hmm. That's crazy right there. And Christians have a huge problem with this as well, living for us. We're really good at tricking ourselves into thinking we're living for Jesus when we're really living for us. Mm-hmm. A lot of times we come to Jesus so He'll save us. We come to Jesus so He'll save us, and we stay there. Like that's the end of it. When in all reality, that's still living for you. If you're not concerned what Jesus wants from you now, you're still living for you. We kid ourselves by saying we're actually followers of Christ if all I care about is what's God going to do for me? What can God do for me? We're just kidding ourselves. And here comes a quote from a great man.
Me?
No, this is
oh, man.
the great man.
Churchill.
C.S. Lewis.
Oh.
Actually, both my next points have quotes by him. This is kind of longer, so y'all just buckle up. And this is C.S. Lewis taking the perspective of Jesus in his book, Mere Christianity. If you haven't read that, I recommend it. Every Christian should read Mere Christianity.
I've never made it all the way through Mere Christianity.
What?
Are you serious?
Yeah, I just get bogged down in it.
So good.
It's great. It's just dense.
Do you have a copy?
It's very dense.
Yeah.
I was about to say, I have a copy. I'll let you
I
try again.
reading it slowly.
If you're interested in the book, I'll link it down below through my Amazon link.
Very good. I've actually got the other quote is from a different book, but
What's the other book? Maybe I've read that one.
The
Lion,
The Weight of Glory.
That's a
really
good one too.
Yeah, it's very good.
Non-fiction stuff.
Well, C.S. Lewis was primarily like a Christian philosopher type of person.
I mean,
Great
maybe,
theologian.
but
Yeah, maybe.
The Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe was sick.
That's what he's best known for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Great Divorce was sick.
Yeah, it's really good. I'm about to tackle Till We Have Faces. That's like the last one he wrote.
That a little bit.
Everybody says it's hard to get through, but it's worth it once you get to the end.
Yeah, I heard it's really good. I don't know. I've never read it.
So back to back to this.
What does Lewis have to say?
Anyone who loves their life will lose it, while anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it for eternally. So we're laying down our life for Jesus. And this is Lewis taking on the perspective of Jesus. And he says, give me all of you. I don't want so much of your time, so much of your talents and money, and so much of your work. I want you, all of you. I have not come to torment or frustrate the natural man or woman, but to kill it. No half measures will do. I don't want to only prune a branch here and a branch there. Rather, I want the whole tree out. Hand it over to me, the whole outfit, all of your desires, all of your wants, wishes, and dreams. Turn them all over to me. Give yourself to me, and I will make of you a new self in my image. Give me yourself, and in exchange I will give you myself. My will shall become your will. My heart shall become your heart. And that's kind of the life-changing thing, that once Christians realize that, you're laying down your life, you're picking up something else. Like you're gaining true life. You're getting God's will when you lay down your will.
I think the whole concept of laying your life down was so foreign. I mean, it's the heart of, ultimately the heart of the gospel is I lay down my life for his. Like I exchange my life and lay it down for his life on the cross. Like there's a great exchange. It's the heart of the gospel, but I think it's also the hardest part of the biggest stumbling block of the gospel, in my opinion, is the fact that I have to lay myself down.
Yeah.
You know, we all love the idea of Jesus dying for us. We hate the idea of taking up our cross and following him.
I think most people, most Christians, don't actually understand. They think Jesus came to save their life when he's actually come to ask us to die with him. And when we do that, we actually gain new life. So a lot of Christians think Jesus came to save our life right now, when that's really not what he's even asking in the first place. This is a temporal life. We're a vapor. That's what the Bible says. One of the things the Bible says. We're not living for ourselves anymore once you become a Christian.
Yeah, absolutely.
This kind of ties in sort of to one of the pieces of advice I had on the Christian life. And this is going to sound weird, but the advice is stop trying to be a Christian. And then
I agree with that.
Done. So I'm a Buddhist now.
To clarify what I mean by
Back
that,
to chasing money like I was before. That was real fulfilling.
no, what I mean by that is
It's the complete opposite of the advice I just gave.
no, it's not. Let me finish. Let me expound.
Like the Bible says, quit pursuing Jesus.
No, I didn't say pursuing Jesus. I said quit trying to be a Christian. What I mean by
Those
that,
people.
yeah, I'm one of those people. What I mean by that is so many people.
It's not a religion.
Pursue Yahweh. Yeah, you mean.
It's not a religion.
It's not a relationship.
Spiritual.
It's a relationship. No. What I mean by stop trying to be a Christian is that we build up in our heads what we think being a Christian looks like, what we think I need to obtain, or I need to check off this list so I can be a good Christian. And we're pursuing being a good Christian rather than pursuing Jesus. And so part of that is that concept of dying to self and my life being laid down. Jesus didn't come to make my life the perfect Christian life. He came to redeem us back to relationship with him and to live his life through me. So instead of me trying to be what I think a Christian looks like, I become what a Christian looks like by pursuing him and allowing him to live through me. And so instead of trying to obtain, this is what a Christian does and this is how a Christian lives and this is what I'm supposed to do, getting that out of my mindset and saying I'm following Jesus, and where he goes I go, what he does I do, what he says I say. And when we live like that, then we will live that perfect Christian life. And I say perfect in a loose sense, you know what I mean? When we do that, he begins to live through us. But so often we hinder the Spirit of God truly living through us and walking in the Spirit because we are trying in our own flesh to focus on being a Christian versus just following Jesus.
Yeah, that's similar to the works versus faith argument. So it's not that we're working to be saved, we're working for justification. It's once we put faith in Jesus, once we are justified, Holy Spirit leads us into work then.
Yes.
But it's not to get the justification. We work because of. So in your example, we're a Christian because of our pursuit of Jesus.
Exactly. And I think it's so easy to, and it's natural human nature because we're so temporal minded that we look at our temporal life. And so our job, our thought process tends to be, what do I need to do? What steps? And we create checklists in our mind. Okay, I don't need to do this. I need to do this. I need to stay away from that, and I need to do this. And instead of, Jesus, my heart is yours, I'm following you, and now I'm doing this because this is how you live. This is your nature. I do this thing. I don't do this thing because it's opposite of your nature. I'm not creating this, I'm supposed to do this because I'm a Christian. I'm not supposed to do this because I'm a Christian. Instead, this is who he is, so it's who I am. I just naturally reflect him in his image. Any thoughts, Alex?
No. Plead the fifth.
He's still on the fence about the whole Christian
I agree
thing.
with everything you're saying. Yeah. It's a relationship. It's not a religion, brother. I'd rather be in my boat thinking about God than in my church thinking about fishing. You know what I mean?
That's deep.
That's, I think,
You know what? I think you're just going to hell.
it's the alternative universe where Peter says no to Jesus. He's like, I'd rather be in my boat thinking about Jesus than walking with Jesus thinking about all them fish.
Or just rather be with Jesus, thinking about Jesus.
Yeah, you got to pick one or the other. What am I supposed to do? Be self-controlled? Pass. Hard pass.
So that was my spiritual as far as Christian life. And the other thing as far as the Christian life is just let go of expectations. I think so often we expect certain things when we become like PL. I know a lot of people who got saved expecting things in their life to get better, and then they didn't.
Yeah.
And then they end up getting angry at God, or I expect this one thing. And so when I say let go of expectations, that can be taken the wrong way to the extreme of don't expect anything.
Right.
And that's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying it goes back to pursuing God, following God, right? If I'm following Jesus, my expectation is that Jesus is going to do great things and amazing things through me and in me, and so that's my expectation. I don't place the expectation of him. You've got to do it this way.
Right.
You've got to, and I think that's what we often do. And I think of Jesus, the story where he heals the guy's eyes by spitting in the mud. They brought the guy to him and said, lay your hands on him and heal him. And instead Jesus spits in the mud and puts mud in his eyes. We have to let go of expectations of how we expect Jesus to do something and just trust Jesus to do something.
Hey, you guys remember that time that ridiculous pastor spit on his hand and wiped it on that guy's face? You remember that?
What was his name?
I'm just going to say, let's not do that.
I don't remember his name, but that was ridiculous and
All I'm saying-
silly.
All I'm saying is don't do that. If you're a pastor watching it, don't do that.
Unless you're Jesus Christ of Nazareth, don't do that.
Your illustration doesn't have to be that physical.
Dude, yeah, people will remember your sermon. See, and I don't even remember the sermon. I remember he did that, and his whole thing, I'm sure, was like, oh, so people can remember that. I don't remember.
No.
I don't remember him
You just talk to Lugio, an old boy.
needing attention. Yeah.
Jeez. I remember that sound. You know how that.
Yeah, that was a good one, too.
All right. So next advice.
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others.
I thought that was going to be something else.
What do you think I was going to say?
I thought it was going to be something funny.
Oh, no.
I thought you were saying something stupid.
No. If you want to go fast, go by yourself. You can do things more efficiently by yourself. Absolutely. But the attrition rate of that is quick. So
That's really good advice, and from just not every area of life, including your spiritual life.
yeah.
We're talking about kind of the Christian walk here. Like, you were not designed by God to do Christianity alone.
Yeah. You can't fully know Christ without community.
Yeah, because within the Godhead, there's community.
Yep.
So how can you know the nature of God if you don't experience that aspect of that nature?
Yep.
I think it's interesting that, we talked about community on a previous episode, link down below. You were designed for community, and as a result, there's a lot of people who, my relationship with God, I don't need the church. Like,
Right.
I don't need to go. I can serve worship God right here in my bedroom. Well, it's true to an extent that you can worship God in your bedroom, but you're never going to grow in your relationship with God to, like you said, go far. You're never going to get to where you're supposed to be in God without other people to help push you there. Because, when we go through life, I don't care how great of a Christian you are, we go through things where I need other people to encourage me to keep going. I need other people to push me closer to God. There's times when, and people freak out on this, but there's times when we question God. Like, I don't understand God, why this is happening. And other people's wisdom can help you overcome that.
Just for the record, everybody listening, I've never done that. So
Bull.
was all in.
Well,
Day one.
And two, I don't think you can be a good Christian without going to church.
Yeah.
Like, over a long period of time. There's too many things the Bible tells us to do. Don't forsake the gathering. You need to take communion. Communion's done with other Christians.
Yeah.
Corporate worship, all of these things. Like, you can't do a lot of this stuff on our own.
Yeah.
And I know we look back in church history at the monks, and like, those guys did a lot of good stuff, But that doesn't mean they were right.
Right.
It doesn't mean they were right about everything.
On everything. And
And they had their own communities out in the deserts too.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, if you hate being around other Christians, A, there's probably a heart issue that you need to deal with.
You're probably not a Christian.
And B, if you hate being around other Christians, you're really gonna hate heaven.
Yeah, because that's all there is there.
There's a little more room up there. That's where the real ones are. Down here's a bunch of hypocrites.
Yeah, heaven's getting crowded anyway. Y'all just don't even worry about it.
That's my favorite when people are like, I'll do anything for Jesus. And then, like, you don't go to church because you're tired from work.
Yeah.
Like, I'll lay down my life for the sake of the gospel. And it's like, nah,
Yeah.
I got to get up early tomorrow, so I'm going to skip Bible study.
That's because the truth is, most people are like Peter, you know,
Right.
I'll die for you, Jesus.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to deny him. You know,
Right.
like
Yeah.
it's-
I won't live for you, but I will die for you.
Right. So Chase, what's your last piece of advice
Well,
before we move to Saint or Ain't?
It ties in with community real well. To have successful, good community, biblical community, we need to have the right perspective about the other people that are involved. And we're going to jump right into another C.S. Lewis quote here. This one from The Weight of Glory, I believe. I'm pretty sure that's where it is. Okay, and he says, "There are no ordinary people. You've never talked to a mere mortal. Nations, cultures, arts, civilizations, these are mortal, and their life is to ours as the life of a gnat. But it is immortals whom we joke with, work with, marry, snub, and exploit, immortal horrors or everlasting splendors. This does not mean that we are to be perpetually solemn. We must play, but our merriment must be of that kind, and it is in fact the merriest kind, which exists between people who have from the outset taken each other seriously. No flippancy, no superiority, no presumption." So everybody we meet in life, whether it's a coworker, a spouse, friends, a stranger, they have an immortal soul. They're always going to exist. And just like he says, they're always going to exist in one of two locations, immortal horrors or everlasting splendors. And when we we attach that to people, it's got to change our perspective on them. I think a lot of times we go through life, Christians go through life, thinking we're the only immortal one. Or at least that's how we treat other people. Like, I'm the only one that's going to last forever. I'm going to get what I can from you. I'm going to manipulate all this other stuff to put myself in a better position. When if I really thought you were an immortal soul, I would treat you so much better than I would treat you otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
That's really good. And that, so tying that into the idea of community, it's another reason for community that I think we overlook. We think about how we need community. A lot of times we overlook how community needs us. There's other people are eternal souls. They need us. Like, it's being other focused. It goes back to what I said about being interested versus interesting, right? Like, I'm interested in that person. They are an immortal soul. They are someone who, they're not just a mere mortal, just another mere person, that they're someone truly created by God. They have, it's just that idea of thinking of someone that way is so important, and it'll change, like you said, change the way we see them. So when I look at community, when I look at you guys, I look at you not as just friends and people in my life. You are, but you're truly created by God in the image of God, that you have, like, you're important, like you have value, inherent value. And I think that's so important to view people that way.
I do have value.
Yeah.
So it's important to see people that way. So I think it's good advice.
Yeah.
Lewis for the win.
Lewis for the win.
Yeah.
So this has been some good advice. Hopefully you got something out of some of this advice. But now it's time for Saint or Ain't.
Saint or Ain't.
All right, Alex, what is this week's Saint or Ain't?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Saint or Ain't is the fun game we play around here, where we pick a topic and we decide, is this topic for the saints of God, or does this make you an ain't
Whoa.
of God? This week's topic that we will discuss on Saint or Ain't: R-rated movies.
Whoa.
Do you guys know, though, before we dive into this, what a pirate's favorite kind of movie is? R-rated movies. R.
Oh, that's a good one.
Pirates that make the famous pirate noise. They say R. And this goes along with. So R-rated movies.
You didn't need to explain it.
Well, it just took a minute to sink in. That's okay. R-rated movies. So what do you guys think? R-rated movies. Now, I know there are different things rated R for different reasons. Does that play into it? Why or why not? Saint or Ain't? R-rated movies.
That's a great question.
Came up with it myself.
So I'm going to say right off.
Didn't brainstorm this a couple weeks ago. I came up with it all on my own.
I'm going to say right off the bat, I'll go ahead and saint it, but with caveats.
Whoa!
So-
Bold stance.
Bold stance. I do not think R-rated movies, just the fact that the movie's rated R automatically makes you an ain't. So I do think R-rated movies are rated R for different reasons. That will play into what makes it. So I'll give you an example. Passion of the Christ is rated R.
Whoa.
Does watching Passion of the Christ automatically make you an ain't?
Yes.
Of course not.
You're breaking the second commandment.
I ain't even
True.
going into that.
That's a pretty grave an image. Oh, wait, does that say you
Not what that's talking about.
no other gods before me?
Not what that's talking about. So,
Catholics.
A
would be
lot of
fired
people
up
would
watching
disagree
this.
with you about that.
they would,
Yeah.
and I can make a video on that. We could have a whole
A lot
discussion
of
on that.
people we
another
really
time.
respect would disagree with you on that.
And I'm okay with that.
They don't watch the Passion?
Yeah,
Hmm.
Presbyterians.
There's
Really?
yeah.
They don't have
Anything
any
they won't
images
watch
of
the show
Jesus.
Chosen. They won't watch
Yeah.
any of that because anything of images of Jesus at all.
I was listening to a guy today, and I like some of his stuff, but he was talking about how he catechizes his kids and he reads Bible stories to them, and he's got this kid's Bible, and it's got pictures of Jesus in it. And when he reads it to them and shows them the pictures, he covers up Jesus when he's showing them the picture, so they're not developing a cartoonish image of Jesus in their minds.
Well, that's a good conversation for another time.
What if
Let's
there's
get
like
back to
an
R-rated
actual
movies.
picture? What about the Shroud of
He
Sure.
would say that's not Jesus. Like, even if we had a Polaroid picture of him,
Oh.
he would say we can't use that.
Sounds good, dude. He was a dude. Anyways, yeah, that is a different topic for a
Different
day.
topic for different day. So
That
R-rated
would be
movies.
another good Saint or Ain't.
That
though.
would be though. That would be an interesting one. But for R-rated movies,
Graven images.
what are something is we've got different things. You can go to the level of nudity in movies, and things that are rated R for nudity, and then we could go, okay, there's different types of nudity in movies. This is going to get crazy. What about Schindler's List? Schindler's List has nudity in it. It's about the Holocaust.
Well, I know it's about.
I haven't seen it either.
It's a great movie. I recommend it, but it has nudity in it. But it's not. It's people, Jews in concentration camps being. It's not like sexual nudity, and it's not. I promise you ain't watching that and lusting.
Right.
So what is like? So even with those type of topics, and that's a rated R movie. So the question is, what is it rated R for? And why are you watching the movie? Is it rated R for just violence? Is it a war movie where there's a bunch of violence? Is that bad? No, I don't think so. So to me, it's not automatically an ain't just because it's not a rated movie. If you're watching a movie that's very sensual and nudity and sexualized for the just for the purpose of being entertained by sensuality, then you could be crossing. You know what I'm saying? So what are we? What's the
Yeah.
purpose behind it?
This is a good question with a lot of depth to it. I'm going to say Saint with asterisks,
Asterisk.
multiple asterisks. I actually saw an R-rated movie like last week.
Whoa.
Nefarious
How
is rated R.
dare you? That's a Christian movie.
Yeah, there's no cussing. Like, there's one violent scene, but that's it.
What's
and
it rated
it's
R
rated
for
R.
then?
The producer said they chose to rate the movie R so less Christians would go see it. Like, that's why, that's the rating board is separate from the people that make the movie.
Yeah.
So those people on whatever board just rated it R. to try to downgrade it.
Interesting. They really worked with the Passion of the Christ to keep Christians away from it. So it's a good idea.
The Ferris is a great movie. I recommend it. Passion of the Christ is a great movie too.
Yeah.
Jim Caviezel.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever see Count of Monte Cristo that he was in?
It's a great movie.
Yes.
Sick.
Mhm.
Dude.
Great movie.
That's so good.
I know I never finished the book. I got halfway through and hit the slog.
He's like 10 chapters on his nephew.
But before we move on, I wanted to tell what my asterisk is.
Yeah,
go ahead.
What's your
I
asterisk?
was planning on doubling back to you. Let you finish your point.
What's your asterisk?
So, like, I agree. It's the sexual scenes. And I say this for just about everything. Why are you going to see the movie? There's a lot of even Christian movies now that are inappropriate. Like, I haven't seen it, but I've heard reviews of that Redeeming Love movie. That's a really popular movie, but there's sex scenes are like implied in there, and I'm not sure if these people were married at the time. And there's just we have to be careful that we're not being played and being led along in our emotions, no matter where the movie comes from. Christian movies can do it. Secular movies can do it. I don't think the rating necessarily matters as much as the actual content of the movie.
What's your thoughts?
I don't know. Yeah, I guess it comes back to where your heart is. But I'm also thinking, like, that also doesn't make G and PG and PG-13 movies automatically okay, too.
Right.
Agreed.
There's a lot of, Harry Potter, for instance, demonic.
Absolutely not.
But also, too, like, I also think, though, like, if it's a representation of what happened, it should be, like, life isn't G-rated all the time. The Bible's not G-rated all the time. And so, like, it'd be real hard to make a movie that's accurate of the Old Testament without it being R-rated.
Yeah.
Especially Song of Solomon, especially, Leviticus and Exodus and literally any book of the Old Testament, as far as violence or any of that stuff. So I don't know, and it's definitely a heart issue of, if you're using it for the purposes of, I want to be entertained by violence, or I want to be entertained by sex, or I want to be, whatever, then yeah, that's an issue. But if I'm wanting to learn, or if I'm wanting to, whatever it is, I guess that goes back to the bigger picture of, like, I'm watching this for entertainment purposes, so that puts it in a different category than if I was just trying to learn about, whatever it is.
Well, I think even with entertainment purposes, like, for example, I'll tell you a movie, Saving Private Ryan. Very violent movie. Got a lot of language in it. Very entertaining movie. I wouldn't necessarily say a Christian watching Saving Private Ryan, which has a lot of language and a lot of violence, would be necessarily wrong.
Yeah.
That it's a war movie. I don't see, like, to me, there's nuance there, and I think
they probably said a lot of bad words in reality.
Exactly.
Whatever that was happening.
I guess there's two aspects of this. I think there are some things that are hardline, like if you're looking at, if you're watching movies with a lot of sexuality and especially nudity, well, that's a hardline. Hey, Scripture says don't lust. You're especially as a man, but as a woman too. For you're not going to sit there and watch someone naked in a sexual scene and not naked and not lust, right? So there's hard line things right there that I could draw a hard line on. But then things like violence, things like, well, the Bible's violent,
right.
And what level of violence reaches a place? Like if I'm watching a war movie, is watching a war movie really a level of, like, what am I watching? See, I guess there's nuance there, and I think some of that is not necessarily you can draw a hard line. It's going to be a conscience issue with different people. I'm not going to look at someone who's watching a movie for entertainment that has violence and draw a hard line and say that's a sin for you.
Yeah, I would put a distinction between just movies, for example, Saving Private Ryan and something like Saw or something like that. I think there's a big difference there.
Yeah, where there's a yeah.
where the violence is the entertainment versus there's something else going on that includes violence.
Yeah.
They're being violent for a reason. I
Yeah.
mean, like David killing Goliath was good. That violence was a good thing.
And yeah, I think there's a difference between violence that is a result of the situation that someone's in, like war or something like that, or violence where someone's breaking. There's a movie that deals with someone somebody's breaking into their home, and there's violence where that person's trying to survive. The good versus evil type of mentality versus Saul, where it's all about the evil, twisted evil. Yeah,
guys like are fed up with their 9-to-5 jobs, so they start clubs where they fight each other, and that spins into a secret society of clubs all over the world where they fight.
First rule of Fight Club is not to talk about Fight Club.
I didn't.
Well, they're just trying to
say those words anytime.
They're just trying to find meaning and truth.
Yeah,
we can respect that.
It's just a hypothetical situation. I'm just spitballing ideas here.
Let's take this one step further before we. Huh? I'm
that
not saying
really?
it. Let's take this one step further before we give our official stamp. What about movies with excessive language? That there's nothing sexual in the movie, maybe even not a lot of violence, but it has excessive language that has bumped up that rating.
I think for me, I don't care. Like, it doesn't affect me and my language. So, like, I don't care. And, like, and I've had lots of conversations with, I say lots, but I've had some conversations with my wife of just, like, it just doesn't come in to me as like, hey, those are words that somebody shouldn't be saying. I know, like, I'm not going to talk like that. So, like, if it's comedians or if it's, like, movies or whatever, like, it just doesn't compute with me that, like, oh, that's a bad word. So I got to be careful. Like, my kids are in the car, like, my wife or, like, whatever. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but just, like, I don't talk like that, so it doesn't, like, impact me. Like, I guess I wish they wouldn't, but it doesn't bother me one way or another. That's how they're. It also comes back to like sinners are going to act like sinners. So, like, if I'm going into, like, a bunch of non-Christians, they're not going to play by the same rules I'm going to play with. And so me being like, oh, I'm like, well, that's just how you are. So, like, So, yeah, I don't care, but I don't know if that's the right thing. Just me personally.
That's probably where I'm at, too. I don't know. I haven't really thought too much about this, probably because I'm the same way. A lot of those words don't even ring around in my mind anymore because, like,
Right.
I work in a rock quarry. Every other word out of those guys' mouths, I don't cuss, but they do.
Yeah.
Everybody does.
Nobody cusses in the jail that I work in.
Yeah,
So,
right. But yeah, I don't know.
Maybe we're just desensitized to it.
That could be what it is.
And it could be. I think. So I've heard the argument. Well, why? If you don't think that that's a good thing, why are you going to be entertained by it? But to me, there's a difference between something that I'm entertained by, including that, versus being entertained by that.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So, like,
you're not looking at that as something to emulate either.
No.
Which, if you're in a stage of life where that's what you're doing, you're trying to find your identity or whatever, like.
If you're watching something that has a lot of language in it, and then you constantly struggle with saying things you probably shouldn't be saying,
right,
then you shouldn't be watching those things.
Yeah.
If you and I think that's the difference. I don't, and like I said, I don't find it as, I'm not being entertained by someone cussing. Cussing is one of those things that if you're a non-Christian, if you're someone who you're gonna, like, it's gonna be all around you, you're going to hear it. And I don't expect for there to be a movie made by non-Christians where they're not cussing to appease my sensibilities.
Right.
There may be a movie with a great story, nothing bad in it except the language that I wouldn't use.
Degrades it. It takes away from it.
It does, but it's not. I don't see it as a sin to be around, like, to be entertained by something where you're entertained by the storyline or whatever, and that there are people cussing, any more than if I was at a football game being entertained by football and there are people cussing on the sidelines, or if I was to me, that's I'm not being entertained by the cussing. And I wish they would take the cussing out. It make the movie better. But
Yeah, there's probably a lot. Cussing is probably the least issue in those movies,
Yeah.
like that we would need to worry about. There's
Yeah.
probably a lot more moral issues to
Yeah.
be concerned with than the use of language non-Christians use.
Yeah. I agree. So I would say my official stamp on it, Saint.
Sure, me too.
Was it R-rated movies?
R-rated movies.
Yeah, Saint with an asterisk.
Saint or ain't, we saint it. R-rated movies. I would also say there's probably some G-rated movies that if you watch it, you'd be an ain't.
Probably Harry Potter. Any of those G-rated?
Not even going to talk about Harry Potter. That's a different saint or ain't.
I think a good way we could look at it is if it makes you sin or want to sin, you should avoid it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point. All right. So we're getting closer to 500 subscribers. Once I hit 500 subscribers, we'll be giving away a CSB chronological Bible right here.
It is the correct translation.
The correct translation.
Oh,
Day by day.
boo this man. Leave a boo comment in the comments.
It's great translation. Day by day chronological Bible has daily readings through the Bible to get through it in a year, and it is broken down in chronological order. So everything mixed together to make it really come alive for you. It's a really great Bible. So I'll be giving away. All you gotta do is be subscribed. So hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell, and like the video. I mean, I'm just saying, if you got something out of any of this advice,
I
like
the
that video. Comment down below. Put your best advice in the comments. Tell me what the best advice you ever heard was. Check out From the Pit Ministries.
Check that out.
Their awesome channel.
Like all those videos first, and then come like these.
Chase does not have a channel, but you can comment down below and tell him how awesome he is, so he doesn't have to do it himself.
You should like his videos.
I might be putting up some stuff in the future, just like simple stuff that I've already got written out.
Hey, there you go. There you go. You heard it here first. Keep an eye out for Chase's channel. But
actually, good channel.
Chase's actually good channel.
Chase's actually good channel.
Uh-huh.
That's it. There are links down in the description for tipping to the channel if you want to donate to help this podcast out. We'll see you next time.